Shalom, and welcome to a message for the Parsha for Parshat Va'era. In this week's Parsha, we learn about the bulk, meaning most of the 10 plagues. You remember those 10 plagues we list at the Seder of Pesach when we celebrate the Exodus from Egypt? Well, they all took place, or most of them took place in this week's Parsha. In fact, 7 out of the 10. And these plagues, they transpired, they actually occurred over a period of time. It didn't happen all in a couple of days. In fact, the sages tell us that every plague, except for the very last one, took an entire month. 3 weeks when Moshe would warn Pharaoh, that is, and remind him that there's a plague and that Hashem, a plague coming, and Hashem wants him to release the Jewish people, allow them to leave the country, and so on and so forth. And then finally, an entire week for the duration, the actual implementation of the plague, where it took place and when it afflicted the Egyptians. Now the question is really, why the plagues? What was it really all about? In other words, do we know why Hashem chose to inflict the Egyptians with the plagues? Obviously, like anything Hashem does, it has a reason, a deep reason, an important reason, and a reason which still resonates in our times. In other words, a reason that still has an application to us, to you, to me, living in contemporary times. What is it? Well, it's not a secret. The verse actually tells us what the objective is. Continuously, constantly, over and over again, whenever Hashem tells Moshe about the plagues, he says to him, V'yad'u Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. And the Egyptians will know that I am God. Not only they'll believe that I'm God, but they'll know. As we have an appreciation of the difference between faith and knowledge, is that faith can be a little abstract. But knowledge, this is in the Hasidic, Kabbalistic teachings, knowledge is something which is real. You know, you've seen it, you've connected with it. It's something that exists in your life. It's not something just abstract somewhere out there. So the idea is that Hashem, God wanted the Egyptians to not only believe in God, but to recognize and to know that there is a God, to realize it as a reality, as something that actually exists and functions in the world, that God is in control of the world. And that's why he continuously did things which were so supernatural, and they continuously, over and over again, saw that it was affecting them. At the same time, the Jews were exempt from it. The Jews were not in any way harmed by these plagues. This told them something, that someone controls the world. Someone controls what looks to be nature, which works on its own. It has its own, so to speak, machine that has its own gears that keep on, cause and effect, creating or causing, I should say, various occurrences, various happenings. No, it doesn't happen on its own. It isn't something that it's a self-contained machine. There is somebody who controls it, somebody who has absolute and full jurisdiction over it and can decide how and when he wants things to happen and how he wants them to happen. So this is the objective of all these plagues. Of course, each individual plague has its reason and its meaning, and there are layers and layers of depth of meaning, but we won't get into it. I want to focus on this idea, and this point that we just made, that the objective of it all is that the Egyptians, meaning even the Egyptians, of course the Jews, should know that there is a God. You see, there are many times, and we know as Jews, that we have no objective in converting others to Judaism. That is not part of our system. That's not part of our religion. In fact, when somebody comes to convert to Judaism, we are supposed to discourage that person. We're supposed to explain to them that there's no need for it. We are not looking for more members. Well, we got enough problems with our own, but that's not the reason. The reason is because there isn't really an objective to make the entire world Jewish. That is not what it's about. Every human being has a purpose. Every human being has an imperative and therefore a privilege to be connected to God in their way. If you're Jewish, the way a Jew is meant to be. If you're a non-Jew, the way a non-Jew is meant to be connected to Hashem. And that is what we're supposed to be focused on. And that is the message over here in this week's Parsha. God did not expect the Egyptians and did not instruct Moshe to convert the Egyptians. He didn't. There's no expectation. But he did want them to know that there is a God. We as Jews, it's our imperative and therefore our privilege, and it should always be our objective, to see to it that the entire world, everybody in the world, recognizes the true God of the world, not just the true God of Israel. The true God of the world is the true God of Israel, and comes to behave in a manner which is consistent with his holy will. That is, to live a life of morality, a life of ethics, a life of kindness, a life of goodwill, a life of unity amongst people, even and especially when we disagree, when we don't necessarily see eye to eye on certain matters. We're not meant to all be, best friends, but we're meant to get along. We're meant to be kind to each other, to be benevolent, that there should be a good and benevolent world. Shabbat Shalom.